Well, good morning, everyone. Glad you could be here with us for our annual budget briefing. We're excited to talk about what's driving technology procurement across the civilian agencies, civilian departments for FY 2020. And so over the next 45 minutes, we'll be walking you through where some of the biggest opportunities for IT are and the most likely places for investments. Here's a high-level summary of our discussion. Due to the shortened time this year for the presentation, it means we're going to be going over fewer departments and programs than in past years. But if you fill out our event survey, which you'll get via email, you'll get access to our territory planner, and that includes a lot more information, including additional departments. All right, so let's jump right into it. We'll start with a look at some of the overall drivers that are affecting IT procurement. If you attended last year's briefing, you'll remember modernization came up a lot because 2017 and 2018 were really the first years where we saw a lot of the underlying initiatives really hitting their stride. The momentum to drive modernization remains strong this year as well. The President's management agenda is something that Suzette Kent, the federal CIO, is talking about a lot, with the focus being on those systems that are long in the tooth and modernizing them, but doing so with the view of how the government can better manage its data, leverage its workforce, and be creative in how it goes about buying technology. And you still have laws like FTARA, the Data Act, and the Modernizing Government Technology Act, which underpin the modernization strategy because it is either the compliance yardstick or it helps CIOs feel empowered to make the kinds of beneficial decisions they need to make in order to improve their agency's IT portfolio. The whole point here is to remind you that these higher level drivers are critically important because they're mandates that your agency customers must meet. And as we dive deeper into the trends and drivers, we broke them up into the three pillars of IT modernization as reflected in the FY 2020 budget, and it actually is reflected in the DoD budget as well. Data/AI, cloud, and security. So we'll first take a look at data. Data optimization is a huge priority across the government. And we're seeing in FY20 this heightened focus on improving federal data architectures to make sure it's not trapped in silos. And we've recently seen promising steps in this area with the federal data strategy, which includes the mandate for agency chief data officers. What this means for you is that agencies need help figuring out what data they have and then how to translate that into action that ultimately advances their mission. When engaging your federal customers, make sure you're talking about data centricity and how your solution can secure their data, display an audit trail, or improve their ability to store and retrieve information. Speaking of data, federal agencies very much believe in the promise of AI, artificial intelligence, to tackle some of the big optimization and security challenges. Civilian agencies will spend about $1 billion this fiscal year on AI R&D. What federal leaders are still lacking is a common understanding around AI and its capabilities. Again, this is where you can play a role. Consider how AI would help your government customers simplify their workflow or strengthen their security posture. With the interest in and implementation of AI continuing to rise, there are growing opportunities for AI vendors to help solve their public sector customers' challenges. And as I mentioned in the DoD briefing, even if you're a technology company that doesn't offer solutions that are specific to AI or machine learning, you can still participate in this growing investment opportunity because, as I mentioned, AI is really about data quality, collection, integration, as well as storing and cleansing and protecting that data. And it also means having, again, the right architecture to enable and support AI. And so clean, authoritative, and trustworthy data is the foundation of all analytics that's relevant to the DoD side as well as the civilian side. And so the upshot of all this is that it's going to increase demand for not only data integration tools to ensure that the necessary data is being collected, but also data quality and preparation tools. And this is important because if a data feed can't be trusted, it's putting critical infrastructure at risk. And this is, of course, reliant on cloud as a foundation.
With that being said, let's move on to cloud, which continues to be a major trend for agencies, driven partially by the Data Center Optimization Initiative. Right now, most of the easy lift stuff, such as email migration, is largely done. So now, agencies need to tackle more of the harder applications to migrate, as well as closure of some of their data centers. Agencies are exploring cloud solutions for a wide variety of needs, including business and financial systems and supply chain management. And of course, we can't talk about cloud without touching on FedRAMP. As we explored earlier, as your business develops its federal market presence, it makes both financial and operational sense to put the complexities of FedRAMP compliance in the hands of a dedicated turnkey program like OnRamp. The benefits will allow your business to grow more quickly, free from the headaches of coordinating compliance. There's a session later today that explores this opportunity further. Finally, a significant pillar of the administration's Cloud Smart policy is empowering agencies to decide which applications are well suited to the cloud and which ones need to stay on-prem. For this to happen, agencies need enhanced visibility into their systems. In the coming years, you can expect requirements focusing on accelerating CDM-enabled deployment of cloud monitoring capabilities. This will give agencies the visibility into cloud environments they need in order to more effectively protect their data. And, of course, data, whether on or off-prem, poses a tempting target for cyber attacks, and so security is top of mind throughout the federal space. What we've heard from leadership is a clear desire to move away from the traditional focus on perimeter IT and towards treating threats as though they're already inside. This is reflected through the FY20 goals for CISA, which seeks to help agencies better measure risk as well as develop new ways of protecting their data. Additionally, we're expecting to see an expanded use of zero-trust architectures and digital identity management tools, especially as agencies move more services to the cloud. Your key takeaway here is that effective messaging around security will increasingly not be your typical cyber play, like protecting against malware. Rather, it's more about threat intelligence, information sharing, and situational awareness. We're also seeing more attention given to supply chain security, especially in regards to emerging technology like 5G. Both the Secure Technology Act and recent NDAAs include language mandating that the federal government reduce supply chain threats and establish criteria for determining what types of products pose risks to the government. Being able to trace exactly where your products come from has become more important than ever. Last but not least, a much-needed recent update from OMB to the Trusted Internet Connection policy introduces use cases and suggests agency pilots for exploring alternatives to traditional network security, like endpoint solutions. With the guidance laid out by this TIC update, agencies should find it easier to explore cloud and remote security solutions.
All right, so before we jump into the departments themselves, let's look at the overall civilian IT budget. We present this chart every year, and we tend to say broadly the same things as the same agencies dramatically outspend the rest. This year, however, there is a change. HHS, which traditionally is the second largest IT spender, has been relegated to third overall behind the VA, and that's driven largely by the massive increase in requested investment around their electronic health record system. We should also point out here, as we do every year, that these are requested budgets, and until we get a signed appropriated budget, these are just requests. It looks like that we'll finally get another continuing resolution today. Today was the deadline, but that's going to take us through December 20th. So as we go through these agencies, bear in mind that most of your customers may be a little reluctant to spend real money until their appropriations come in, but I expect it to largely remain in this ballpark. All right, so as you can see, so we'll look at the specific departments within the Homeland Security. There's a slight uptick in the budget request from FY19. DME, that stands for Development, Modernization, and Enhancements, so think CapEx. A steady state is OpEx. There's a slight decline in CapEx dollars, and that's mostly due to the CDM program moving more into an operational rather than developmental state. Most of the CapEx dollars for DHS are going to NPPD, so the National Protection and Programs Directorate, to upgrade the security posture of civilian agencies via the CDM and Einstein programs, as well as the Customs and Border Patrol. Now, while those aren't the only pockets of opportunity at DHS, you may find more room for opportunity this fiscal year at those agencies. Okay, so IT spending continues to be fairly flat at DHS, so let's turn to the contract landscape. One of the things that stands out here is the contract strategy DHS is pursuing as part of its follow-on to Eagle 2 with Eagle Next Gen. Eagle Next Gen is just going to be a menu of recommended contracts like Alliant 2, CIO SP3, et cetera, that DHS agencies can tap into to acquire the IT services they need. The recompete of First Source 2, the products vehicle, looks to follow a bit of a different path, as DHS looks like they might end up standing up their own vehicle and try and pursue a best-in-class designation and maybe open the vehicle up to other departments. We see an increase in spending via Schedule 70 compared to previous years. Keep in mind that a good portion of that will be due to the shift in the acquisition strategy for CDM Defend. Also, you'll need to form strong relationships with the major SIs at DHS to get access to a lot of these IT dollars, either because they'll use your products in developing the systems that Homeland Security will rely on to power its mission going forward, or because those systems will act as trusted advisors for their government customers, vetting your products for inclusion in the agency's environment.
Now, here's the overall organizational structure. Obviously, the components at the bottom are where most of the budget is spent. Expect more investments in technology for the border and for data analysis that comes with visual imagery, at FEMA for preparations for natural disasters and the ability to quickly respond, and at ICE for the increase in detentions. The Coast Guard will also see continued investment as Arctic sea lanes open and Russia expands their presence in the north. Here's a look at Acting CIO Beth Capello's organization. The headquarters office is positioning itself as a central point for major technologies the components will need, as well as facilitating conversations among them to share lessons learned or to figure out that if an innovative prototype one office is working on can also be used elsewhere. Additionally, the IT Services Office remains the key office for you to focus on at the headquarters level at DHS, and it's where you'll tell your cloud story, sell your infrastructure tools, and deliver your messaging around transformative software at the department. In regards to security, the Information Security Office will be working with CACI to deploy CDM tools across the DHS environment, and this will be where you want to pitch your security solutions to get access to those defend dollars. As for what is driving procurement, the biggest sustained driver of expansion continues to be cloud technologies. However, this transition isn't happening all at once. Mission-critical systems will continue to exist on-prem for the foreseeable future. This means that the opportunity for selling on-prem solutions, while a tad diminished, does still exist. Also, a lot of legacy DHS apps are in DC2, which they want to close in 2020. This means those apps need to get into a cloud or get into DC1 down in Stennis, Mississippi. Another hot topic at DHS is, of course, security. One big push will be information sharing around election security, which CISA will help state agencies with. Another thing worth mentioning here is CDM. There are conversations around the future state of CDM, including whether the program will deliver a SOC as a service model for agencies to make it easier on them to have greater security capabilities. There's also a new risk measurement coming to CDM that won't be available publicly. This means that those agencies who aren't doing so great won't become greater targets because our adversaries can't see which agencies are more vulnerable. As those risk scores come into play, staying sticky with your customers may mean uncovering some additional opportunity. Next, we'll take a look at two of the larger DHS programs for FY 2020.
And the first is the National Cybersecurity Protection System, or Einstein. This program office falls under the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. This is an infrastructure stack combined with security software to halt malicious activity before it can get onto the civilian networks. And it works by having sensors placed in front of the agency's trusted internet connections, and then it scans and monitors all information that's transiting the agency's networks. Some of where the money will go in FY20 will be to upgrade intrusion prevention and detection capabilities. And more specifically, these upgrades to the Census Suite are designed to account for an evolving attack surface that's brought on by cloud and mobility. The program wants to operationalize non-signature-based detection and working with cloud service providers so that DHS network defenders have access to their security services and data. On the analytics and information front, some of the priorities for FY20 include enhancements to analytic tools to further automate cyber threat analysis, and also working toward a single platform that will improve the tracking, coordination, and reporting of cyber threat information that gets shared out to the rest of government, as well as state and local agencies. And here you want to work with Raytheon to help add your technology to the new stack. Next up is the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services Transformation Program. This is a big iterative development project for the agency that focuses on agile delivery of new capabilities to the electronic immigration systems. With the obvious focus on immigration, there's pressure to streamline and enhance the agency's case management and benefits processing operations. Current business processes can't prevent backlog buildups that result from frequent application surges, and therefore this program is critical towards reducing the agency's reliance on paper-heavy manual processes that affect its ability to process immigration-related paperwork or verify applicant identity and provide DHS with the material that they need to make informed decisions. So there's a need here for data integration, case management, and application development solutions. So you want to make sure you're bringing those solutions to this program office, as well as the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services CIO, Bill McElhaney.
Speaking of transformations, onward to an agency undergoing a significant transformation of its own, the Department of Veterans Affairs. First things first, the budget. So a visible increase in DME here, and that is partially due to the contract with Cerner to overhaul the VA's electronic health record systems. Not all DME is concentrated in the Cerner contract, however. Another major program in line for significant DME spending in FY20 is the new Customer Relationship Management Program, and investment priorities there include application modernization and platform consolidation. There is also the Financial Management Program, which has requested around $65 million in FY20 DME funding with an eye towards automation and data analytics. Moving on to the top contractors at VA. Of course, Cerner and its subcontractor Leidos are working on the EHR implementation, but we also have Booz Allen, which is currently assisting VA with moving its mobile applications to cloud. Booz Allen, Halfacre & Associates, and Government CIO are all primes on VA's T4 Next Generation contract, which, as you can see, is the top contract in terms of spend. Dell continues to be involved with multiple projects at the department, and AT&T is still providing network services via the Networks contract, which has been extended until 2023. Other than T4 Next Generation, SOUP and Schedule 70 remain the preferred contracts at VA, and that hasn't really changed in the past few years.
Okay, so shifting from the budget, here's a quick overview of the department structure. The Office of Information and Technology, led by CEO Jim Graffer, is the major IT insertion point. This will be your main point of entry for COT solutions, although there are a few stakeholders at VBA, National Cemetery Administration, and other staff offices. VHA is focused on data technologies and expanding telehealth efforts, so that would be a good place to start if you have any mobile technologies or analytics or visualization or even data security solutions. All right, so we're going to drill down a bit into the subdivisions of the Office of Information and Technology. There's ITOPS, which is the network backbone and where the data centers are located. OIS is obviously cybersecurity. And incidentally, the CISO role was taken over by Paul Cunningham earlier this year. The Enterprise Program Management Office oversees the large projects like the Cerner EHR implementation. And then you have the account management office, which has teams that are aligned with each of the major mission offices at VA, so VHA, VBA, National Cemetery Administration, et cetera. And those account managers are important points of contact if you're looking to have more strategic conversations around technology at the department.
Speaking of strategy, let's now briefly examine the overarching strategy driving current IT efforts, which is VA's Digital Transformation Initiative, also known as VA Modernization. This strategy strives to ultimately provide better services to veterans through modernizing IT systems and business processes. Of course, the EHR migration is a part of this, but the strategy also focuses on business solutions for VA, such as financial management and supply chain systems. As for the Cerner EHR implementation, there are still many moving pieces. For example, VA recently decided to implement Cerner's COTS patient scheduling system rather than the one from Epic they were originally going to install. So while this contract may seem like a done deal, keep in mind that such a large and complex implementation is likely to develop additional requirements and even some unforeseen obstacles. Developing or maintaining stickiness with the main subcontractor Leidos may mean opportunities for work orders down the road. Next up at VA is infrastructure modernization, which includes both consolidating tech stacks and migrating to cloud. VA is sunsetting the tech stack that was in DIS's St. Louis DEC and moving it into the Philadelphia IT Center. As a part of this, they're looking to the cloud, including migrating the VA's legacy set of Vista applications into a cloud environment. An additional feature of the VA's modernization strategy is their Lighthouse API program, which provides anonymized data to private industry so they can conduct research that can aid the health of veterans and build useful tools, which is a win-win for everyone involved. The Chief Modernization Officer at VA has called APIs a gateway to modernization, so this is an initiative to keep an eye on. Next, we'll explore a couple of specific programs in line for significant new spend this year. Firstly, of course, we're going to zoom in a bit more on the EHR migration. The current goal is to have the new system go live at a few select VA sites next year, so there's been implementation and testing going on to support that goal. Note that the VA has purchased COT solutions for its requirements so far, in keeping with its buy first strategy, so anticipate further openings for COT solutions as this implementation continues. Remember, too, that a central goal of this contract is to have a system that will ultimately be interoperable with the EHR system at DoD, so keep an eye out for future requests around system integration and interfaces. Leidos has been the main subcontractor involved so far, but the other contractors listed on the slide were also tapped by Cerner as partners on the project. So it is entirely possible that as work progresses, we will see requests coming from these companies as well.
Now, in keeping with the federal data strategy that we touched on earlier, the VA is exploring ways it can not only manage, but also optimize its data by moving away from manual and paper-based processes. This investment, new as of last fiscal year, focuses on multiple requirements, including data access services, API management platforms, and the CRM system. And the team is currently moving applications to cloud and delivering more APIs. So if you have analytics, integration, or reporting tools that can live in the cloud and enhance the department's efforts to make sense of its data, you'll want to reach out to the project manager, Terry Strickland. The next department we'll cover is HHS. The department's requested budget for FY20 has decreased slightly from last year. This is because programs that are affiliated with the Affordable Care Act have mostly moved into sustainment mode. However, cybersecurity spending is projected to increase substantially, for which the agency has requested nearly 25% more funding than in FY19. Now, for contractors at HHS, we have here a list of familiar names. Leidos is pretty well entrenched at the department, and they help maintain the imports inspection system at FDA, among other things. On the contract side, Schedule 70 has been the top vehicle at HHS for at least the past few years now, with the following two, of course, being the government-wide vehicles administered by NIH, and those last two are HHS-specific IDIQs. Also, it's worth noting that CMS holds the virtual data center contract for managing its infrastructure and also the Spark contract for general IT system needs.
Now it's time to review HHS at the organizational level. The Office of the CIO, Jose Arrieta, is located under the Office of the Assistant Secretary for Administration. However, it is important to note that the sub-agencies at HHS, which are known as operating divisions or OpDivs, each have their own IT budgets and enjoy a high level of autonomy in making their own IT purchases. This year, because of the opportunities available, we'll be going more in depth on CMS and FDA. And with that, we'll look at CMS first. Those of you who cover HHS probably already know that CMS is a large territory in its own right. A good place to start is their main IT shop under Operations. Specifically, the Enterprise Architecture and Data Group issued an RFQ earlier this year to explore its options for modernizing its legacy data infrastructure and databases. Keep an eye out for the results of that inquiry early next year, as CMS has designated its data centers a budget priority for FY20. Additionally, the Innovation Center at CMS is key in administering the Quality Payment Program, more on that in a moment, and also tests models for new solutions, which means you have the chance to exercise early influence over what solution is adopted. And now it's time to move on to FDA. You'll notice a slight shuffling here, and this is because the FDA recently elevated its centers directly under the commissioner. However, your target is still the IT shop under Operations, headed by FDA CIO Amy Abernathy. FY20 opportunities will also come out of the Office of Regulatory Affairs, led by Melinda Plaisier. This is where two major IT programs live, or Imports and CERSI, and both programs are in line for significant DME spends this fiscal year. If you focus on portal development or data security and integration, think about targeting those programs this year.
Now, if you were here at last year's briefing, you'll recall that we touched on HHS's A by May initiative to improve their FITARA score. As of the most recent scoring, which was this past June, HHS is at a C-, not good. But they've actually made strides in multiple areas, but they're still struggling to meet their cybersecurity challenges. So the department is tweaking its FITARA strategy to focus on improving reporting efforts, strengthening cybersecurity, and data center closure and cloud migration. Now, as you might imagine, data is critical to every OpDiv's mission at HHS, and the largest OpDiv have designated data optimization as a priority for FY20. For example, CMS is focusing on data quality and integration for major systems such as Magnus, which we'll talk about shortly. Meanwhile, over at the Center for Disease Control, they're continuing to focus a large part of their DME, or CapEx, spend on their surveillance data platform, which we covered last year. But broadly speaking, data visibility is a need across the board. So if your solution can provide secure data integration while offering increased insights, HHS needs to hear from you. Finally, a top department-wide trend for this fiscal year will also be the ongoing transition to cloud. CMS successfully migrated its federally facilitated marketplace to AWS in May and is now looking at migrating other major functions to cloud, such as Medicare fee-for-service. In keeping with this trend, keep your eyes peeled for requirements around data integration and security solutions that can live within the cloud. Okay, so when looking at specific programs to target, note that CMS has requested an increase in DME funding for modernizing its quality payment program. This program brings together different systems, namely the merit-based incentive system and the alternative payment models, to enable physicians to submit quality of care data. The purpose is to consolidate these quality reporting systems into one for more efficient reporting. The program itself is already up and running, but more work remains to be done, and the main priority for FY 2020 is further system integration. Vintech is the main contractor on this effort, so you'll want to work with them if you have integration, reporting, or analytics tools to offer. Next is MACBIS, which stands for Medicaid and CHIP Business Information Solution. It's an enterprise-level set of systems that makes Medicaid and CHIP program data available to CMS as well as researchers. The MACBIS investment consists of the consolidation of multiple legacy and manual systems into an automated program in AWS that will contain data on Medicaid and CHIP. For FY20, CMS is looking to spend money on automation and data integration tools. So if your solution is able to help CMS improve data quality, you should target this program.
Let's move away from health IT and onto the Department of the Treasury. So here's an overview of the budget. You'll notice an increase from last year's budget, but this is mainly due to the increased cost of maintaining legacy systems, especially at the IRS. As always, the IRS represents a significant chunk of the Treasury's IT budget, and the bulk of opportunities, including modernization initiatives, are found here. However, there are still a few initiatives at the other offices around cybersecurity and cloud. And onward to the top contractors at Treasury. You can expect Accenture to remain at or near the top for the time being as they develop and maintain major portals for the IRS. AT&T is near the top as well because they manage network operations. Unisys is working on a couple of major projects within the IRS that we'll touch on later, and they will also be providing cloud services to the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency per a BPA signed earlier this year. A significant development on the contract side is that Treasury did not recompete its TIPS 4 IDIQ vehicle last December as a part of a contract consolidation effort. Current task orders under TIPS 4 have been extended until December 2019, but after that, you can expect the dollars you see in TIPS to flow to existing contract vehicles. That is good news if you hold any of these vehicles, or if not, definitely consider teaming with an SIR partner on their contract so you can take full advantage of that shift. Next, we'll review the most relevant divisions and offices at Treasury. And first, of course, IRS is an obvious target since it receives more than half of the Treasury's IT budget. However, another office you'll want to pay attention to is the Office of the CIO, which is within the Office of Management. There are also some smaller initiatives at the Bureau of the Fiscal Service, which is located under the Office of Domestic Finance and led by CIO Doug Anderson. One top project that the Fiscal Service has requested FY20 DME funding for is their Central Accounting Services System, and for that, they are looking mainly at enhancing system security. Since it's where the majority of opportunities will be found, let's take a quick look at IRS before moving on. Note that IRS CIO Gina Garza retired this past May, and Nancy Seeger has taken over as acting CIO. The Taxpayer First Act, passed in July this year, codified the role of the CIO in directing IT strategy at the IRS. As with last year, you'll want to look at operations. The two offices to target here are Applications Development and the Enterprise Program Management Office. The EPMO is where both the CADE2 and Web Apps projects are located, which we'll talk about in a moment.
Now, modernization has been a buzzword at Treasury for many years now. In FY20, we'll see renewed efforts by the department to meet its modernization goals. And a large part of this strategy is a big push to cloud. The latest development in this arena is Treasury announcing a plan to implement a $1 billion enterprise-wide multi-cloud contract that it's calling T-Cloud. The RFI for this is expected any time now. But in the meantime, most bureaus under Treasury are already exploring cloud hosting. For example, the Bureau of the Fiscal Service is migrating most of its programs to cloud and is especially interested in cloud-based data analytics capabilities, which is another big theme. So if you offer cloud-based reporting or analytics tools, your contacts at Treasury will be open to ideas on how they can better manage and synthesize and secure their data. Next, if you've been here before, you recall that we've previously touched on cybersecurity requirements for offices under Treasury. This year, again, we see this emphasis on cybersecurity, with data protection being a core pillar of the modernization plan that was released by the IRS in April of this year. And of course, it would be April. For IRS, their security priorities are consolidating their identity and access management, implementing stronger encryption tools, and having more complete end-to-end visibility. Since the TIPS 4 vehicle is being discontinued, there is potential for an increase in COTS requests for these requirements in the future. IRS also wants to double down on emerging technology, and they're looking for industry's guidance on what that looks like. Automation is emerging as one of the key areas where we're seeing this implementation. And their procurement shop has already introduced a responsibility determination bot that shrinks that particular process to just 5 minutes. And they're introducing a program for emerging tech called Pilot IRS that will allocate money as a new solution is tested. And this will allow them to explore new technologies at lower risk. And this is obviously also an opportunity for vendors with automation and machine learning solutions to demonstrate their capabilities. Now, moving on to specific IT investments within Treasury, we'll look at two of the largest. And the first is K2. This program is expecting increases in CapEx as further enhancements are planned for FY 2020. The IRS wants this system to be the central data repository for tax data, so it's laser focused on system security and improving data integration. This project is currently in transition state 2, which is heavily focused on revamping the legacy architecture of the individual master file. In the longer term, the IRS also wants to apply the data in this system to a variety of purposes, so there also might be future requirements for data analytics and reporting tools. The next program is IRS Web Applications. The IRS is looking at further improving its web applications in FY20. And these are public-facing applications that cover a range of taxpayer tools and services. And this links in with the broader goal at the IRS of delivering the up-to-date digital services expected by the modern taxpayer. Since these are public-facing, you can bet the IRS will want to keep the tools current and user-friendly. And right now, the IRS is working on a new API in conjunction with the Bureau of the Fiscal Service, as well as a tool for online payment installments. So if you have solutions that you think will further enhance the public's experience with these apps, you should reach out to the program manager, John Cayley.
Moving on to the last civilian agency we'll cover today, the Department of Commerce. In terms of the budget, you'll notice the big uptick for FY20, which does pertain to the 2020 census. As you can see, most of the DME dollars from last year have shifted to steady state this year, and that is because those census systems that were in development are now in sustainment. In past years, there's typically been more of an even split between the three big bureaus at Commerce in terms of the IT budget, but again, Census is currently outspending the others to gear up for its 2020 activities. We'll look at the top contracts and contractors at Commerce on the next slide. So first, we see a different top contract for Commerce for FY19, and that is the CIOCS vehicle. And that is because CDW is providing mobile devices and services to the Census Bureau off of that vehicle. Otherwise, each of the three major bureaus at Commerce has their own systems development contract, but over the past few years, a healthy amount of spend has also gone through Schedule 70 and SOUP. In terms of the other contractors on this slide, not much of a change from last year. In addition to CDW, General Dynamics was also awarded a contract in 2017 to support census efforts, and they are supporting technological and staffing efforts at the Census Contact Center.
Okay, so we'll jump right into the structure of the Bureau of the Census. The Decennial Census Program Office on the upper right there is where most of the IT budget is being spent for development of IT systems. It's not the 2020 Census Office. But keep in mind, though, that with the 2020 census almost upon us, there's not a lot of CapEx at this point. However, there may be some additional work to be done if you're offering cutting-edge security solutions. And if that's the case, in addition to the decennial census folks, you'll also want to engage the census CIO, Kevin Smith. He and the decennial census office have been collaborating closely on security for a while. And incidentally, Bo Hauser was recently hired as a census CISO this September. Otherwise, a lot of the opportunity will be down the road once the data is gathered, so think analytics, reporting, and visualization tools. NOAA is the other organization within Commerce that you'll want to take note of. Of course, there is the Office of the CIO, Zach Goldstein. However, with NOAA, there are many important IT insertion points, as each of these offices each have their own significant IT needs for accomplishing their data-intensive missions. Broadly speaking, the technology requirements to note here are analytics, data visualization tools, and security.
For the Census Bureau, the most significant focus in the near future will be scaling via the cloud during the actual field count, as well as security. Much of the recent conversation around census security has echoed concerns around election security, including the importance of safeguarding the data and preventing fraud. The most recent GAO report at the end of October shows that the census has made great strides in securing their systems ahead of next year's count, but they are still behind on testing for several systems. Post-census, the story will be transforming the data into actionable intelligence that can be used and studied by researchers. It's also important to note that the Census Bureau does more than just the census. There's a lot of other applications for their data, and they do a lot of other surveys where there's also applicability around security, hosting, and data tools. Similar to the Census Bureau, NOAA is also looking at modeling and analytics, but also information sharing, particularly in scenarios where lives could be at stake. For example, NOAA will share data with FEMA during a natural disaster in order to support recovery efforts. Finally, one last important trend to note at Commerce is that NIST is conducting research on and developing standards around emerging technology, and they like to collaborate with industry on this research. For example, NIST is currently collaborating with at least a couple dozen members of industry and academia on blockchain research. NIST is also working on developing more specific standards around federal use of AI and machine learning technologies. Now, we've said that most census programs are in sustainment. Well, this program is actually looking ahead to the post-2020 census. In other words, now that the data is collected, how can the Census Bureau best share it? SEDSCI is the answer, consolidating legacy platforms into one efficient shared service system. Again, the big focus here is utilizing technology to harness the power of that data in the most effective ways possible. The program is currently focusing on migrating existing data sets, as well as introducing additional search and display features, including one for microdata. If you have a solution to support these data-related activities for SEDSCI, you'll want to reach out to the program manager, Richard Denby.
So if you were here last year, you recall we talked about the central processing investment for the National Weather Service. This is the investment that links up and shares data with the weather community. Its mission tracks back to one of the core goals of the Weather Service, making sure that they can continuously share up-to-the-minute weather data to make the U.S. a weather-ready nation. As you might imagine, there's a wide array of technologies that are associated with this project, but they are especially looking at data interoperability, information sharing, and secure transfer of data. So if you have tools that can assist with any of the above, you'll want to reach out to the program manager, Michelle Manali. Now, I know we've covered a lot of ground today, so let's take a minute to sum up our key takeaways and conclusions. What we're hearing from government contacts is that those of us in this room are more important than ever to ensuring that customers can execute on their missions. They need help from technology partners to ensure that there are no gaps in mission delivery, and they also need us to help demonstrate total cost of ownership and really prove to OMB and other stakeholders that their planned modernization efforts will result in cost savings down the line. Agencies need help automating workflows, interpreting data, and securing their enterprise. And initiatives like Cloud Smart, the digital strategy, and this overall focus on infrastructure modernization are leading to concrete results and opportunities. Also, it's worth remembering to always start with the end customer and what their problems and challenges are and work back from there. Also, if partnership potential exists, again, it makes a lot more sense to that program manager or contracting officer than talking to individual companies. That's how they like to implement, and that's how they would like to buy. And in sum, the opportunity we have is to use FY 2020 to really partner with our customers in a meaningful way and drive both mission and business success. So with that, thank you and have a great rest of the day.